What's shaping up to be one of the most complex winter storm forecasts I've analyzed this season. We've got massive shifts in the latest model runs, particularly affecting the eastern United States, and I've got to tell you, the uncertainty range on this system is wider than I'd like at this point in the game. We are going to walk through the central U.S. situation first, then shift our attention to the eastern U.S., and then I want to geek out a bit about the atmospheric dynamics at play here because they absolutely fascinating and they explain why this forecast has been so challenging. Let me start with what we know with high confidence. Winter storm watches and warnings now extend from San Antonio, Texas, transitioning into extreme cold watches as we move northward through Dallas-Fort Worth, Oklahoma City, Little Rock, Memphis, and Nashville. These watches continue extending through Louisville, Cincinnati, Charleston, West Virginia, all the way into the D.C. corridor, Baltimore, and portions of Philadelphia. That teal color you re-seeing on the map represents winter storm watches. The pink zones indicate ice storm warnings, and those purple areas are where we have the most confidence in significant ice accumulation. I need to be clear about something. Ice storm warnings get issued lightly. These represent situations where we expecting at least 1/4 inch of ice accumulation, enough to bring down tree limbs and power lines. Let's talk about the cities under these watches and warnings in more detail. Starting in Texas, we have San Antonio, Austin, Waco, Temple, Killeen, Bryan College Station, and Houston, all under winter weather advisories transitioning to ice storm warnings. Moving into the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, Tyler, Longview, Texarkana, we looking at a mix of winter storm watches and ice storm warnings. The precipitation type here is going to be critical, and I'll explain why in a moment. Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, Lawton, Stillwater, Enid, and Ponca City are all under winter storm warnings with significant snow expected before a transition to mixed precipitation. Arkansas is particularly concerning. Little Rock, Fort Smith, Fayetteville, Springdale, Jonesboro, Pine Bluff, Hot Springs, and Texarkana, Arkansas are all looking at what could be a prolonged ice event. Louisiana, particularly the northern parishes, Shreveport, Monroe, Alexandria, Ruston, and Natchitoches, are under ice storm warnings. We're already seeing reports of ice accumulation in these areas, and this is just the beginning. Moving into Mississippi, Jackson, Tupelo, Meridian, Hattiesburg, and Columbus, Mississippi are all in the warning area. The ice potential here is significant. Tennessee is where things get really interesting from a meteorological standpoint. Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Clarksville, Murfreesboro, and Jackson, Tennessee are all going to see impacts, but the precipitation type varies dramatically from west to east. Kentucky follows a similar pattern. Louisville, Lexington, Bowling Green, Owensboro, Paducah, Covington, and Hopkinsville are all in play. Missouri has Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, Columbia, Joplin, and Cape Girardeau under various levels of winter weather alerts. Illinois is looking at Chicago, Springfield, Peoria, Rockford, Champaign, Bloomington, Decatur, and Carbondale seeing significant snowfall. Indiana has Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Evansville, South Bend, Bloomington, Muncie, and Terre Haute all expecting heavy snow. Ohio is absolutely going to get hammered. Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Toledo, Dayton, Akron, Canton, and Youngstown are all looking at significant accumulations. Michigan's getting into this as well. Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Ann Arbor, Flint, and Kalamazoo are all going to see impacts. Wisconsin has Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Kenosha, and Racine in the impact zone. Now let us shift to the southeast and mid-Atlantic. Atlanta, Georgia, Augusta, Savannah, Athens, Macon, Columbus, Georgia, and Albany, Georgia are all under winter weather advisories with the potential for ice. North Carolina is particularly tricky. Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, Durham, Winston-Salem, Asheville, Fayetteville, Wilmington, and the Outer Banks are all going to see something, but what exactly they see depends on which model solution verifies. South Carolina has Columbia, Charleston, Greenville, Spartanburg, Rock Hill, Myrtle Beach, and Florence all in the impact area. Virginia is where we really need to pay attention. Richmond, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Roanoke, Lynchburg, Charlottesville, Alexandria, and Hampton Roads are all going to see winter weather, with the precipitation type being the critical question. West Virginia has Charleston, Huntington, Morgantown, Parkersburg, Wheeling, and Beckley, all expecting significant impacts. The D.C. metro area, including Washington, D.C., Arlington, Alexandria, Bethesda, and Silver Spring, is under winter storm watches. Maryland has Baltimore, Frederick, Hagerstown, Annapolis, and Cumberland in the warning area. Delaware's major cities, including Wilmington and Dover, are watching this closely. Pennsylvania is looking at major impacts from Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Allentown, Erie, Scranton, Reading, and State College. New Jersey has Newark, Jersey City, Trenton, Atlantic City, Paterson, and Elizabeth all monitoring this system. New York is going to see significant impacts. New York City, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, Yonkers, and Binghamton are all in play. Connecticut has Hartford, New Haven, Stamford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, and Norwich expecting winter weather. Massachusetts, including Boston, Worcester, Springfield, Cambridge, Lowell, and New Bedford, is going to see accumulating snow. Rhode Island's capital Providence, along with Warwick and Cranston, are in the impact zone. New Hampshire has Manchester, Nashua, and Concord watching this develop. Vermont's major cities, including Burlington and Rutland, are expecting heavy snow. Maine rounds out our coverage with Portland, Lewiston, Bangor, and Augusta all preparing for winter weather. Now here's where things get fascinating from a forecasting standpoint. We need to talk about the models, and I am not fully convinced that any single model has the perfect solution right now. Let me walk you through what we are seeing. The European model and the GFS, which is the American model, are showing two somewhat different solutions, and I think the truth is going to lie somewhere between them. The European model is more aggressive with the northern stream energy. It's digging this low-pressure system deeper and tracking it further north through the Tennessee Valley. This is what we call a Miller B track in meteorology. What that means is low pressure develops in the Gulf region, then transfers its energy to a secondary low that develops along the Appalachian front. This northern track on the European model brings warmer air further north across Alabama and Mississippi, which means more ice and less snow for those areas. But here's the critical piece. That track also means the deformation zone, where the heaviest snow sets up, would be further north, impacting southern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio more significantly. The GFS has a slightly different solution. It's trending towards keeping the low-pressure track a bit further south, which would mean the snow-ice line sets up about 50 to 100 miles further south than the European model suggests. This would put places like Little Rock, Memphis, and Nashville more in the heavy snow zone rather than the ice zone. The problem is we're running out of time to figure out which model is going to be correct, and the difference of 50 miles in that track makes an enormous difference in terms of impacts. Let me explain why this matters so much. Blue is snow, pink is freezing rain, orange is sleet. I am going to repeat that several times because it is crucial to understanding the maps. The transition zone between these precipitation types is incredibly sharp. We're talking about going from all snow to all freezing rain over a distance of maybe 20 to 30 miles. That's why a 50-mile shift in the storm track completely changes the forecast for millions of people. What's happening atmospherically is this. We've got Arctic air that's already in place across the central and eastern United States. This cold air is locked in east of the Appalachian Mountains, what we call cold air damming. It's like the mountains are acting as a dam, holding that cold air in place. Meanwhile, we've got this southern stream low-pressure system ejecting out of Texas, bringing Gulf moisture northward. When that warm, moist air rides up and over the cold air at the surface, we get what's called overrunning. The problem is there's a warm nose in the atmosphere, a layer of air above freezing about 3,000 to 6,000 feet up. So precipitation falls as rain through that warm layer, but then it hits the sub-freezing air near the surface and either freezes on contact, which gives us freezing rain, or it has time to refreeze in the air, which gives us sleet. Here's what makes this particularly nasty. The depth and intensity of that warm nose determines what kind of precipitation falls. A robust warm nose gives us more freezing rain. A weaker warm nose gives us more sleet. And if the warm nose doesn't develop at all in certain areas, we get all snow. The models are disagreeing on the exact position and intensity of that warm nose, which is why we're seeing these different solutions. Let me walk through the timeline for key cities because I know that's what you really want to know. Let us start in Texas. Dallas-Fort Worth, you are looking at precipitation beginning Friday evening around 6 p.m. It's going to start as snow, but I expect a fairly quick transition to sleet and then freezing rain by midnight. The European model keeps this going through Sunday morning with total ice accumulation potentially reaching 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. The GFS is faster and drier, cutting off the precipitation Saturday afternoon. Houston, you are further south, so your event starts later, probably Saturday morning around 8 a.m., and you are looking at primarily freezing rain with little to no snow. Accumulations could reach 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice. Oklahoma City, your precipitation starts Friday afternoon around 3 p.m. as snow. You will probably pick up 3 to 5 inches of snow before transitioning to a mix of sleet and freezing rain Friday night. This continues through Saturday with additional ice accumulation of 1/4 to 1/2 inch possible. Tulsa, similar timeline, starting Friday evening around 5 p.m., beginning as snow, 3 to 4 inches possible before mixing with and changing to sleet and freezing rain. Little Rock, this is where I am really concerned. You are right in the bullseye for a prolonged ice event. Starting Friday evening around 7 p.m., this begins as snow. You might see 2 to 3 inches, but then a prolonged period of freezing rain Saturday into Saturday night. Total ice accumulation could reach 1/2 to potentially 3/4 of an inch. That's enough to cause widespread power outages and make travel absolutely impossible. Memphis, you're looking at a start time around Friday evening at 8 p.m. The European model has you mainly in the snow, 6 to 10 inches possible. The GFS brings more mixed precipitation. I think you will see snow changing to sleet, then perhaps some freezing rain before ending Sunday morning. Nashville, your event starts Saturday morning around 3 a.m. You on that critical transition zone. Could be heavy snow, 6 to 12 inches, or could be more mixed with significant ice. We are still trying to iron out those details. Louisville, precipitation begins Saturday morning around 6 a.m. as snow. You are looking at 8 to 14 inches of snow based on current model consensus, with the European model on the higher end. The question is whether you see any mixing with sleet late in the event. Cincinnati, very similar to Louisville, starting Saturday morning, heavy snow likely, 8 to 16 inches possible with the highest amounts north of the city. St. Louis, this one's interesting. The models have converged pretty well here. Starting Friday evening around 9 p.m. as snow, continuing through Saturday. Total accumulation 6 to 10 inches, with the heavier amounts south of the city. Kansas City, you are earlier in the timeline. Starting Friday afternoon around 2 p.m., snow develops and continues through Saturday morning. Total accumulation 4 to 8 inches. Indianapolis, you're in the heavy snow zone. Starting Saturday morning around 8 a.m., snow develops and becomes heavy at times through Saturday night. Total accumulation 10 to 16 inches is looking likely. Columbus, Ohio, very similar timeline and accumulation to Indianapolis. Cleveland, you are a bit later, starting Saturday afternoon around noon, but the snow continues through Sunday morning. 10 to 18 inches is possible, especially on the east side of the city. Chicago, your event starts Friday evening around 10 p.m. and continues through Saturday night. 6 to 12 inches of snow expected, with lake enhancement possible on the south side. Milwaukee, similar to Chicago, starting late Friday night, 6 to 10 inches expected. Detroit, starting Saturday morning around 9 a.m., 8 to 14 inches of snow, likely through Sunday morning. Now let's move to the southeast. Atlanta, this is really uncertain. You could see primarily rain if the warm air wins out, or you could see significant ice if the cold air holds. Starting Saturday morning around 6 a.m., I think you will see a mix of sleet and freezing rain with ice accumulation potentially reaching 1/4 to 1/2 inch, especially north of the city. Charlotte, you are right on that line. Starting Saturday morning around 8 a.m., could be snow changing to sleet and freezing rain, or could stay mostly snow. 2 to 6 inches of snow possible, or significant ice. We need another 12 to 24 hours to nail this down. Raleigh, similar situation to Charlotte, starting Saturday around 10 a.m. The European model has you more in the ice. The GFS has you more in the snow. Columbia, South Carolina, starting Saturday morning around 9 a.m., expecting primarily freezing rain with ice accumulation 1/4 to 1/2 inch possible. Charleston, South Carolina, you might see some sleet and freezing rain Saturday afternoon, but impacts should be minimal compared to areas further north. Richmond, Virginia, here is where cold air damming really comes into play. Starting Saturday morning around 9 a.m., I expect this to start as snow, but quickly transition to sleet and freezing rain as warmer air tries to move in aloft. Ice accumulation could be significant, 1/2 inch or more possible. Washington, D.C., very similar to Richmond, starting Saturday around 10 a.m., snow transitioning to sleet and freezing rain. This could easily shift northward, so areas like Baltimore and Philadelphia need to watch closely. Philadelphia, right now, you on the northern edge. Starting Saturday afternoon around 2 p.m., primarily snow is expected, 4 to 8 inches possible, but if the storm tracks 50 miles further north, you could see significant ice instead. New York City, starting Saturday evening around 6 p.m., snow expected, 4 to 10 inches possible depending on the track. Boston, you will read later in the timeline, starting Sunday morning around 3 a.m., snow continuing through Sunday afternoon, 6 to 12 inches expected. Let me geek out for a moment about the atmospheric setup because it really explains why this is such a challenging forecast. We've got what meteorologists call a split flow pattern. There's energy in the northern stream and energy in the southern stream, and they going to phase together. The timing and location of that phasing determines everything about this forecast. If they phase earlier and further south, we get the GFS solution. If they phase later and further north, we get the European solution. The other factor that's absolutely critical is the strength of the high-pressure system over New England. This high is pumping cold air southward along the Appalachian front. The stronger that high, the further south and east the cold air pushes, which means more area stays cold enough for snow or ice rather than rain. The models are showing that high bombing out, which means rapidly intensifying as this system approaches. That's good news for keeping cold air in place, but it also creates stronger winds and more dangerous conditions. There is also a dry slot that could develop Saturday afternoon across portions of the Mid-South. This is where precipitation could shut off for several hours before resuming. If that dry slot is more pronounced, it limits total accumulations. If it doesn't develop as strongly, we see higher totals. The Canadian model is actually showing the most pronounced dry slot, which is why it has lower snow totals than the European or GFS models in some areas. Now let us talk about snow and ice accumulation maps because these tell the story visually. Blue is snow, pink is freezing rain, orange is sleet. The European model has the main axis of heavy snow extending from southern Illinois through Indiana and Ohio, with a bullseye of 12 to 18 inches where Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia come together. There's a secondary bullseye across portions of Pennsylvania and New York where we could see 18 to 24 inches. The ice accumulation on the European model shows a wide swath of 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch extending from northeast Texas through Arkansas, northern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and into Georgia and the Carolinas. The GFS model has the heavy snow axis further south with the main bullseye across Arkansas and Tennessee showing 12 to 18 inches. The northern accumulations on the GFS are lower, generally 8 to 14 inches across Ohio and Pennsylvania. The ice accumulation on the GFS is more focused, with the highest amounts 3/4 to 1 inch, confined to a narrower band across Louisiana and Mississippi. Here's what I think is going to happen based on weighing all the data. I believe the European model is closer to reality in terms of the overall pattern, but I think it's slightly overdone on northern snowfall totals. I split the difference and go 10 to 16 inches across southern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. For ice accumulation, I think we are looking at widespread 1/4 to 1/2 inch across a broad area from northeast Texas through Arkansas and into Tennessee and Kentucky, with isolated amounts approaching 3/4 to 1 inch in the worst hit areas. The wild card is how far north and east that ice extends. If the warm nose is stronger than models suggest, we could see significant ice all the way into Virginia and even portions of Maryland. The thing that concerns me most about this system is the duration. We were not talking about a quick hit. This is going to be a prolonged event, especially for areas dealing with ice. When you get freezing rain falling for 12 to 18 hours, when you get those devastating ice accumulations that snap power lines and tree branches, we already seeing power outages beginning across portions of Texas and Louisiana, and I expect those numbers to climb substantially over the next 24 to 36 hours. Temperature-wise, here's what makes this particularly dangerous. High temperatures on Saturday across the impact zone are only going to be in the teens and low 20s from Texas northward through the Ohio Valley. That means nothing melts. Everything that falls stays on the ground. Overnight lows Saturday night drop into the single digits across much of the region, with sub-zero readings across the northern areas. Wind chills are going to be brutal, dropping to 10 to 20 below zero across the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, and 0 to 10 below across the Ohio Valley. Sunday doesn't offer much relief. Highs remain in the teens and 20s across most of the impact area. It's not until Monday and Tuesday that we start to see a warm-up, and even that going to be hit or miss. Some areas will get above freezing, allowing for some melting, but then temperatures crash again Wednesday into Thursday as another Arctic blast moves through. This means that any ice or snow that falls is going to stick around for multiple days, complicating cleanup and power restoration efforts. Let me touch briefly on the severe weather threat because it's an often overlooked aspect of these winter systems. Along the Gulf Coast from New Orleans through Mobile, Pensacola, Tallahassee, and into southern Georgia, we have a 2 to 5% tornado risk Saturday into Saturday night. The same system bringing snow and ice further north is bringing strong wind shear and instability further south. We could see supercells develop, some capable of producing tornadoes. This is a quasi-linear convective system setup where you get a line of storms with embedded rotation. These QLCS tornadoes can develop quickly with little warning, so folks along the Gulf Coast need to be weather aware Saturday afternoon and evening. Wind is going to be another factor with this system. As the low pressure intensifies and moves northeastward, we're going to see winds increase. Sustained winds of 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts to 40 or even 50 miles per hour are possible, especially across the Great Lakes and Northeast Sunday into Monday. When you combine those winds with heavy snow, you get blizzard conditions with near zero visibility. When you combine those winds with ice-laden tree branches and power lines, you get widespread outages and dangerous falling debris. So let me try to synthesize this into key takeaways because I know I've thrown a lot of information at you. First, this is a high-impact winter storm affecting a massive area from Texas to Maine. Second, the exact location of the snow ice line is still uncertain, which means forecasts for cities right along that line could change significantly. Third, ice accumulation is going to be the biggest story across the South, with potential for prolonged power outages. Fourth, heavy snow is likely from the Midwest into the Northeast, with some areas seeing 1 to 2 feet. Fifth, brutal cold accompanies this system, meaning impacts will be long-lasting. I need to emphasize something. This is one of those situations where the impacts could easily exceed what the forecast numbers suggest. When you have an ice storm that lasts 12 to 18 hours, when you have heavy snow falling at rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour, when you have wind chills 20 to 30 below zero, the societal impacts are enormous. This is not a forecast where you want to test the limits. If you are in the impact area, take this seriously. Prepare now for the possibility of extended power outages. Make sure you have food, water, medications, and a way to stay warm without electricity. One other aspect I want to mention is the impact on travel. By Saturday afternoon, travel is going to be extremely dangerous to impossible across a huge swath of the country. We're talking about interstate highways from Texas to New England being impacted. Airlines are already starting to issue travel waivers. If you have travel plans this weekend, seriously consider postponing them. This is not a system you want to be out driving in. Looking beyond this immediate system, I need to mention that there are signals for additional winter weather next weekend. We're rewatching another potential storm system that could impact portions of the East Coast, but it's too early to get specific with that. What I can tell you is that this overall pattern supports additional winter weather potential through at least the first week of February. The Arctic air is entrenched, and we have an active southern stream that keeps sending disturbances our way. We're running out of time to figure out the exact details of where that snow ice line sets up, but here's what we know with high confidence. A major winter storm is impacting a huge area this weekend. Snow totals will be significant, likely measured in feet in some locations. Ice accumulation will be devastating in a broad area across the South. Temperatures will be dangerously cold, and this is going to be a long-duration event with impacts lasting several days. I'll be back tomorrow morning with fresh model data, and we'll see which solution verified overnight. We'll also dive deeper into the severe weather threat for the Gulf Coast and start looking ahead to that potential system for next weekend. If you like a specific forecast for your city, or if you have questions about this setup, leave them in the comments and I'll answer individually as time allows. This has been a complex forecast to put together, and I appreciate you sticking with me through all the details. Understanding the why behind the forecast helps you make better decisions for yourself and your family. If you found this breakdown helpful, I'd appreciate you subscribing to the channel, but more importantly, use this information to prepare. This is a serious winter storm, and the time to get ready is now, not Saturday morning when the snow and ice are already falling. Stay safe out there, and